So this is an extremely important part of our electrical system. So this is called the Master LV that's made by MG, who is the battery manufacturer that we're using for the big 48 volt bank on the boat. This thing is a battery management system, a BMS, and all of the power that goes into and out of the batteries goes through this thing. And so it controls the charging and the discharging coming off of the batteries, making sure that we don't overcharge, making sure that we don't over discharge. So today we're going to get this thing installed and show a little bit more about what it will do. Now you're stuck.
Before we go any further, some folks have expressed that our electrical system is too complicated. I agree that it is more complicated than the average boat, but I think it is as simplified as possible given what we're trying to accomplish, which again is to be able to live aboard year-round at anchor. So here's a 1-minute explanation with what I hope is a helpful visual. Everything comes from the 48 volt battery bank, which is the heart of the system. That bank is monitored and regulated by the Master LV, which is the main distribution and battery monitoring system. The biggest loads and chargers are coming off of this Master LV, which are the propulsion motor and the generator. From the Master LV is a secondary 48 volt distributor, which is the Lynx distributor by Victron. All the smaller 48 volt loads and chargers are run off of this, including but not limited to the windlass, solar array, inverter chargers, the water heater, and other things. Lastly, the entire 24 volt load circuit, which powers the pumps, lights, nav equipment, is run off of this Lynx distributor as well through a 48 volt to 24 volt charger and a 24 volt battery bank. A lot of these components will talk to each other for monitoring and controlling, but this is essentially what the whole electrical system boils down to. This week, I'm installing the Master LV and the secondary Victron distributor. These are vital components in the system.
Yanni, the Prince of Norway wants to give us money. That means we can finally give the people what they want. And we can put hydrofoils on Duracell. This boat's gonna be so fast.
Are you sure it was the Prince of Norway?
Oh, definitely.
Sounds like someone got a hold of Matt's personal data, and I don't think it was the Prince of Norway. But luckily there's Incogni. Thanks Incogni for sponsoring this episode. Our personal information like phone number, email, address, and more are being bought and sold online and exposed across various websites. Incogni tracks down and removes your personal data from multiple sites, including online directories, people search sites, and even commercial databases. Data can reappear on these sites, so Incogni repeatedly removes it for you. There's also a custom removal feature, so a dedicated privacy expert will take down almost everything about you online if that's what you want. You just create an account and Incogni gets to work. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's really no risk. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code Duracell at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan.
So this is where I'm going to be mounting this thing. That is because, like I said before, all the power going into and out of the batteries goes through this thing. So I want to mount this as close to the battery box as possible. All the battery cables will be coming out right here, and so they'll go straight into this thing. I'm just going to be bolting this to the wall. One thing about mounting to, like, you know, this whole boat is built out of fiberglass over foam panels, and if I were to just screw this thing to the wall, the screws would just pull right out eventually. The foam does not hold screws very well. And so I want this to be a very securely mounted piece, and so I'm going to through bolt it, but I'm also going to replace the foam with potted epoxy, and so that the bolts cannot crush the foam, the foam panel, and it's just a very secure mounting position.
I used a hole saw and some pliers to remove the first fiberglass skin and core, but not the back fiberglass skin. I taped over the holes so that the thickened epoxy doesn't fall out, and left a small hole at the top for air to escape. I want the entire pot to be filled with epoxy. And then I used Thixo, thickened epoxy from Total Boat, to fill the holes from the bottom up. This method ensures that the whole pot is filled with epoxy and won't fall out.
I gotta show off my bolt wall. So as I get further and further into installing hardware, I don't want to be going back and forth to the hardware store to be getting bolts. And so I built myself a bolt wall. As you can see, my old Total Boat mixing cups came in really handy here. I knew I was saving them for some reason. Yeah, I just organized all of the most common screws and bolts, nuts, washers that I could think of without spending too much money. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of this, and it's going to be extremely handy for expediting projects so I don't, like I said, have to go back and forth to the store all the time. All right, so I'm ready to install this thing. It's not going to be as simple, straightforward, just putting it on there and drilling holes. First of all, this thing is pretty heavy. It's like 20 pounds. And so I obviously want it to be very securely attached to the wall. It's also hard to just hold this thing up and drill holes with only two hands. And so, as you can see, I've got my epoxy inserts. They're all cured and ready to go. And I just put this VHB tape on top of each one. This stuff is coming in really handy for mounting stuff like this. The VHB stands for very high bond, and so it's super strong. It's strong enough that I can just stick it up there and it'll hold, especially a heavy part like this. And then once I get it up there, we can start drilling holes. Okay, so as you can see, that stuff, the VHB holds this thing really nicely. It doesn't move at all, and it's square. And yeah, now I can kind of install this thing or bolt it to the wall without worrying too much about anything moving or this thing falling off the wall. All right, so the intrepid producer, videographer, is going to go and hold the fastener as I put the nuts on. So there are 4 bolts, 4 on top and 4 on bottom. The bottom 4 are behind the fuel tank on the backside. I could probably get a nut behind there, but what I'm actually going to do is try and tap these epoxy pots. So I've got a number 7 drill bit and I've got a 1/4-20 tap, and I'm going to try and just tap them straight in. So we'll see how it goes. Would you mind turning on the vacuum for me, please? Okay, now we're going to take the whole thing back off again. Whew. Yeah, that tape is good stuff. Okay. So this is just tapping, which means I'm just putting threads in the hole so that it can receive my fasteners. They work pretty good. To clarify, I put these top nuts or bolts in backwards from the back side with flatheads on them because the mattress is going to be right there in the quarter berth, and I don't want I didn't want nuts to be chafing on the mattress, tearing a hole in it or whatever. So it's just made it nice and flush on that back side. Cool.
Mike of Sea and Land decided that underneath the bed in the quarter berth will be a great place to mount a lot of the electrical components. He suggested that I used starboard as the mounting plate because it takes sheet metal screws really well and I don't need to seal or paint it. A lot of the Victron components and even the 24-volt battery bank will be underneath the bed inside the port quarter berth. This made the most sense as these components won't need to be accessed regularly, and it is centrally located between the switch panel, 48-volt main bank, and the machine space that's aft. Of course, this mounting board has to be mounted to the boat, so I glued a wood cleat to the stringer that the board will be fastened to at the bottom. Later, I'll come back and epoxy over this wood cleat to protect it. Then I drilled pilot holes into the hole, but not all the way through to the outside skin. Then I removed the core again at those spots, and again leaving the outside skin intact. I made sure the bolts won't bottom out in their pots, and then I filled those pots with epoxy thickened with high-density filler. I set the board back down over the pots and fastened it in place at the bottom. Starboard is the name brand of a marine-grade plastic UHMW sheet stock that comes in many thicknesses. I'm using 1/2 inch. It is extremely useful in these mounting applications. The drawbacks being that it's expensive and heavy. This 1/2 inch by roughly 54 by 24 inch piece is more than 20 pounds. Then I lubed the bolts with wax and then covered the threads in epoxy, which makes sure that the epoxy gets into all the threads. And then I just stuck the bolts in the uncured epoxy pots. This will make threaded inserts into the boat good enough to hold the weight of the mounting board.
All right, so I let these cure overnight where I potted the top bolts of this panel. We're going to see if they worked. What I'm looking for is to make sure that none of the glue came off with the threads. And so that means all the glue is left in there making the threads inside the pot. The first one went well. A little bit of glue in that one, but it still looks good. Perfect.
This component made by Victron is called the Lynx distributor. This will be the secondary distribution of the 48-volt system.
All right, this is my mounting board that's going to be underneath the quarter berth. And the first thing I'm going to mount to it is this Victron distribution bus. This thing is basically a big bus bar and fuse block. It's modular, so it's actually, there's 3 pieces here. This is the power in. Any power coming in or out from the batteries will go through this. And then the outgoing power that is fused will come off of these 2 sides. So, and this is all 48 volts. Everything from the windlass to the water heater. If we get a thruster, the 24 volt battery will be run out of this thing through a 48 to 24 volt converter, and then be able to charge that 24 volt battery. This is the main distribution basically for our 48 volt system. It's going to be mounted very close to the wiring run is going to be right here, so it'll all be very close to itself. And like I said, there's actually fuses. These 2 are fuse blocks themselves, so there will be mega fuses that are bolted on right here, so I don't have to install separate fuse blocks below it. So I'm trying to confirm what else is going to be going on this panel, and what it looks like is there's going to be a 48 to 24 volt converter, and that's going to convert the 48 volt big battery bank to the smaller 24 volt battery bank that most of our lights and pumps and navigation equipment will work on. And so that converter will live on this panel as well. There'll be a switch and a fuse for that thing. And then on this side, we're going to have a pretty big solar array, and so there will be probably 4, I'm guessing, maybe even 5 charge MPPT charge controllers, and those will take up the rest of the space on the panel. And so I just want to make sure that I leave enough space for everything for the future that's going to be mounted. But for now, I have a couple more things I'm going to put on this thing, and then we'll call it good. All right, the next 2 things I'm going to install are, this is a fuse holder. This is for a Class T fuse. And then this is a remote switch. So it's a relay that's controlled by a switch that will be on the panel itself. And that will be basically the main switch that will turn on all the 24 volt, the whole 24 volt panel. This I have mocked up just basically a template just to show the 48 to 24 volt converter that I have my eye on, the one that I really want. But this is the shape of it and everything, so now I can see how everything's gonna come downstream from there. So yeah, we're just gonna put these two things on, and that's pretty much it for now. We're gonna put it back into the quarter berth and see how it looks. Hello?
Hello.
Hey, Dad.
That looks complicated.
It's not. It's very simple. This is all the equipment I have now. Once we start getting more equipment, then we'll pull it back out and mount more stuff to this thing. But for now, like I said, we're gonna put it back into its compartment. It's gonna get heavier and heavier as we put stuff in it. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
We have a few Patrons to thank this week. If you're interested in joining our Patreon community, you can find us at the Duracell Project on patreon.com. First, thank you to Roy, who learned to sail here in the Puget Sound area. In the 60s, and he had many boats that he raced in this area, including a Kettenberg 38, super gorgeous boats, and currently lives in Utah, but harbors the dream to get his own 50-foot catch and sail to the South Pacific. We hope you get around to it, Roy. Also, thank you to Frederick, who has his own big boat that he did a huge refit on, including recoring the entire deck, and has sailed it out of the Great Lakes, out through the St. Lawrence and down the East Coast, and continues to refit the boat, and sounds like he's even considering doing a big keel refit project, so we wish him luck on that. Thank you very much to everybody who's helping with the project. We really could not do this without you, and we'll see you next week.